Welcome to BLOXHUB. Welcome to today's science talk, and hope that you're all ready for what will be a really, really inspiring and wonderful crusade into the topics of universal design. This is our last science talks in the series on healthy buildings, high performance, happy hearts and minds. And for those of you who've been participating in every science talk part of this series, you know that we have been on an amazing journey. We've looked into the hormonal production affected by light or lack of light. We have then journeyed on to the impact of the acoustics and the value of sound, or rather the detrimental effects when sound is not benevolent in a working or indeed a habitable environment. From that we went to address the aspects of space, and we have also looked at the indoor air quality from an abstract perspective with the view of Corona and just what has actually happened with the knowledge of the value of clean air as we're spending most of our times indoors. And this is what we do know, that we spend our lives within public and private buildings, and our daily activities depend more and more on the possibilities that what these environments offer us. As we have learned throughout this series, we actually spend 90% of our life inside. So multiply your age with 0.9 and you will find out how many years at this point in your life that you've actually spent indoors. And that is quite an amazing amount of time when we look at it. And what are we doing at this final science talks in this wonderful series? We're actually looking at just how the environment influences our experiences, how it has an impact on our physical and mental health. One of the major challenges of architects today is to offer spaces that respond to all people's needs, regardless of physical, sensory, mental, and social abilities. This will bring to more usable, livable, and healthy buildings for everyone if we're able to address those various needs. And what we've already ascertained is that the aspects of healthy buildings in terms of indoor climate, be it air quality, light, acoustics, and space, we know that these various areas of expertise offer us profound insights. But then what happens when we look at those insights with the aspects of human needs and the diversity of those human needs? That's what we're looking at today, and that is quite fascinating, I can already reveal to you. To help us gain insights in just how to design and create more usable, livable, and healthy buildings for everyone, I'm honored today to welcome three speakers. We have Roberta Cassi, Industrial Ph.D. Fellow from Royal Danish Academy in Architecture, Design and Conservation, and a huge welcome and thank you to you.
Thank you.
I've really looked forward to this, you know it, but it is a great honor to welcome you. And Roberta, you're not alone, because when we spoke and I invited you to be part of today, you said, listen, this is such an extensive topic and there are various aspects of expertise that we need to look at. Can I bring two eminent scholars with me? And I said, but of course, because this is the final science talks and we do want to cover as much as humanly possible. So with us as well, we have Turid, Borgestrand, Øien, researcher, Ph.D., also architect, but you're from BUILD, the Department of Built Environment, Aalborg University, Construction Management and Innovation. A huge thank you to you.
Thank you.
And then we have Erika Mosca, postdoctoral researcher from Politecnico de Milano in Architecture, Built Environment and Construction Engineering Design and Health Lab. And if you at this point are wondering why is Pernille talking as much as she is, it's because Erika is having quite some difficulties in connecting with us from Milan, and we really want Erika to join us today, so bear with me. And so before I welcome Erika, I can mention myself. My name is Pernille Berg, and I am Science Manager at BLOXHUB. We at BLOXHUB are more than a co-working lab. We are also a community focusing on bridging science and practice. We aim at connecting, sharing, and scaling the knowledge and insights so that we can contribute positively in ensuring sustainable solutions that create good cities, healthy buildings, and healthy environments. Why do I mention that? I mention that because when I spoke to Roberta initially, and Roberta said, listen, I would actually like to invite 2 scholars that I know would also offer some brilliant insights into this topic. The networking aspect came up. Because Turid and Roberta know each other from Universal Design Hub, funded by Babyka Foundation. So that is how you know each other. Yeah. So across research institution, there is a network that actually enable you to share and connect. So thank you for that. I think Camilla is watching us today from Babyka Foundation. So thank you, Camilla. It is really a pleasure to see that this is bringing people together, and now today in BLOXHUB able to share and mediate. And Eika, working diligently to connect with us, you know, from the Politecnico de Milano, yeah. Right? So the networking value is really present here today. It's also a network that's behind this series. So I would like to thank Climate, Realdania, PropTech, Aalborg, Build actually, Lys Technologies, and Velux for this amazing collaboration that's ensuring us to create these wonderful events in the series, our science talks and our BLOXHUB debates. As you are sitting here thinking, okay, can we get started? I would also like to introduce you to my eminent, wonderful colleague, Helle, who is our chat hostess. So as you're watching on YouTube, you will notice that there is a chat function. So you're able to ask questions and post comments in the chat, and Helle will send these comments to me so I can then bring them in our discussion after the presentations. So, just before I will then say, Roberta, let's get started, I'd like to say that this is the last Science Talks, but not the last event in the series. So we will be back on Wednesday with the grand finale, where we ask the question, why not build for maximum standards rather than minimum standards? And the input that we get here today will be actually tap straight into that debate. So thank you for that. And I think what we'll do now, Roberta, is that I will be quiet, introduce and welcome you again, and give the word to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I will start presenting my research, and then I will give the word to Turid and hopefully Erika. The research I'm conducting with the Royal Danish Academy. It's founded by Babyka Foundation and Innovation Funding, and in collaboration with Force for Architects. As you can understand from the title, Disability Experience and Architecture Towards Inclusive Sport and Leisure Buildings. The research focuses on sport buildings and how these buildings can be designed so to improve and support experiences for people with mobility, visual and hearing impairments. The problem is that people with impairments participate less in all forms of cultural and sport activities compared to those without impairments. And this is because they experience physical or social barriers in the built environment. So although most buildings comply with building regulation and assure full accessibility, a user interviewed by a researcher from Aalborg University said that the experience of entering in the pool with a lifter seems to him like feeling like a sack of potatoes, and that it's something that it's better to change. So as an architect, my main and first question would be, how can architecture better improve users' cognitive, physical and social experience? So how can architects can design spaces being aware of how different features can influence people experiences and being aware of how experiences are different if you are sitting on a wheelchair, if you use other mobility aids, or if you have impairments with your vision or hearing impairments. You already talked about the concept of affordances in one of your previous talks, was space, body, and brain. Yeah? And this is a very interesting concept because it ties together the characteristic of the environment together with the physical and sensory characteristics of the individual. So the definition by Clark of affordances is that affordances are the possibility for use, intervention, and action which the physical world offers a given agent and are determined by the fit between the agent's physical structure, capacity, and skills, and the action-related properties of the environment itself. That means that while we experience a space, our bodies that are driven by our intentions and needs perceive some physical properties of the environment and directly identify them as opportunities for action. With this definition in mind, if we look, for example, at the Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired, we can see that some of the features have been designed with the intent to give blind and visually impaired people important information about the space and also about how to move around. So, for example, different texture on the pavimentation, on the wall, or openings and lights that can be easily used as a natural guide. But what happens when the environment doesn't offer us this kind of possibilities? When the environment does not offer the features that we will need for performing an action, then we experience a condition of disability. Disability is not, in fact, a consequence of a disease, but the impossibility or the difficulty to perform an activity because of this mismatch between the individual and the environmental characteristics. But the feature doesn't work in this way because, like, when we experience a space, visual, auditory, and tactile cues of architecture are grasped all in once as an overall atmosphere. But some of these we can see that are more relevant than others for some people, especially for understanding where we are, so for understanding the spatial conformation, for acting in the space, or also for having a social interaction. This is how the research is structured. The definition of the investigation, that it's the identification and the analysis of these kind of features that have the potential to improve the experiences of sport and leisure buildings for people with mobility, visual and hearing impairments. I collect architectural materials from 2 case studies, and I mapped the features that I consider, together with the interviews, the analysis of the interview I had with the architects. I mapped the features which have been designed as a potential affordances, so to improve cognitive, functional, and social experiences. I conducted walkthrough with users with mobility, visual, and hearing impairments in 2 case studies. And I analyzed and linked what I observed with the need that user would have in terms of cognition, functionality, and social aspects. And then finally, that is also the most difficult part, it's how to translate and communicate all this knowledge to architects so they can actually use this knowledge for designing more inclusive sport and leisure buildings. For the investigation, I identified 2 case studies which have been designed with a universal design approach for an improved inclusion for people with disability. The one on the top is Musholm, a fairy holiday center designed by architects. And the one below, Van Hala, it's a swimming pool attached to an existing high school that has been designed by Kubo and Force 4 architects. So I walked around both these buildings, observing and interviewing users with mobility and sensory impairments, so to understand how they made use of the features depending on the action that they will need to do. And the aim was not to identify the barriers, but rather the opportunities that the environment could give them. I would like to bring some example, like for Musholm, that is the area of is the changing room and the area of the showering, the showers. And for a blind user, the presence of a different texture on the wall, it's huge information for him to understand where the showering area are. For a deaf user, the example below, the possibility to have wide visibility toward the inside and outside is the only way for him to have a better understanding of the context around him and knowing what is happening inside, for example, in the next door, but also in the courtyard. In the second case, the Van Hala swimming pool, for example, the entrance, which has been designed in a niche, is an important hint for blind users so that they can understand with a different acoustic there that there is something that's going on, so they can understand that that's probably where they can find the entrance. Or the presence of the unisex changing room. It's an important presence for people that need an assistance from other people, and probably this assistant could be a different gender, so that they can use the unisex changing room and to get ready for the activity without feeling comfortable. The next step I had in my research was to link these relevant features identified during the interviews with the experiential aspect of the users. And I focused on the sensory, functional, and social aspects. So how the body perceives the space around, so how the environment could give information through haptic, visual, or hearing cues, where you are, what's the space around you. The functional body in the space, what are the offers from the environment to move your body, take action, and also because like we experience differently because of different skills, that's important to involve all these different type of impairments and see what's the difference between the cognition of people with mobility, visual and hearing impairments, and the same for the function. And the social aspects, how users want to interact with others in those kind of buildings where, for example, they need some more private space when they need to get undressed, but also are the spaces where they socialize and they implement their network. Any person, when experiences a space, has the first need to perceive the organization and the atmospheres of the context around. So a conscious use of sensory perceptible characteristics like texture, colors, lighting, and acoustic as meaningful spatial reference will allow people to better understand where they are going, and what's the space around. As we said, we are all equal, but each one with a different body, and we behave differently in the space. For this reason, sport building should also offer a wide range of possibility to make use of the space, and also try to experiment new ways of exercising the body itself in the space. Finally, the social aspects and the need of users to be social, but still to have the possibility to have private spaces where, for example, get dressed, relax, or just having a private call. I would like to also give you this example that I consider really elegant, that it's an example of how to use different materials and shape in contrast to a wooden handrail, and that's the information that the environment gives to a blind user when she reached the third floor, and that's like to me, it's a good example of what means universal design. But I also have a short text about it. Universal design does not only focus on creating accessible environments for people with disabilities, it aims to create physical and social inclusion for the entire population, recognizing diversity as an added value to be considered and integrated in the design process. So I will now leave the word to Turid.
Thank you very, very much. We had a very lively talk before, and I will hold back, and we will engage in dialogue and discussion afterwards. But thank you very much. Very, very fascinating. I know we already have a few comments. I will get back to those, but huge praise and applause. Thank you very, very much. Turid, I'll let you carry on, and for those of you watching, Erika is with us, and a huge welcome to Erika. But for now, Turid, the word is yours.
So, and in our title for today, the cue livable is my cue, because I have been researching in people's everyday life and practices in our built environment for the last few years, and an understanding that life is something that happens in the interplay between the individual, its social and physical context, and the convention and knowledge that we actually have on these different aspects as well. And my name is Turid Øien. I'm a postdoc at the Department of the Built Environment at Aalborg University, and I will share some reflection on universal design with you today from my postdoc project, which is on the role of lighting in low vision rehabilitation, and the collaboration I have with the Center for Special Education in Slagelse, and a group of low vision consultants there, in a project that's funded by the VLOX Foundation. And actually, universal design has not been part of their work in Slagelse or in the postdoc as such, but I wanted to bring this in because there is some similarity in the rehabilitative and the recovery-based approach that they have, as they share the origin with universal design from this move from a medical model and a focus on disability and diagnostics to a biopsychosocial model where the environment, the physical and the social environment, is part of both the problem but also the solution to this. And you could say that, as Roberta showed, that in universal design you perhaps approach this human-environment interaction from the environment. In rehabilitation, they take the point of departure in the human. So it kind of, it works well together. And the traditional way of working with lighting for low vision, visual impaired, have been based on their diagnostics, and lighting assessment have been conducted in the clinic with the patients positioned 3 meters from a chart. This sketch shows the Snellen chart, as you might know, and where the visual function would be measured in different lighting settings. But the thing that they have acknowledged and work with in Slagelse have been that you need different light for different activities. Second, people have different preferences for what activities make sense in your life. It's not always the same as the rest. And also that the social and physical environment plays a huge role for how they use light and how they live with light. So they have created a 3-stage process. It is a process, but it's an assessment and an intervention where they actually start out in the home environment of the citizen instead of bringing them in. So there you have the social and the physical environment at stake. And then after doing the assessment there, they invite the citizens and their family or kin, because that's how to bring the social environment into the intervention as well. And then they do a lighting assessment, lighting intervention in in a lighting laboratory. And then the participants are sent back home to actually do these changes on recommendation themselves. And in this intervention, they have also had a follow-up meeting where they actually measure what does this intervention mean for the well-being of these people and how have they gone about it, and to measure the effect. And I have followed them in their home visits and in the lighting lab. I have had an architectural, anthropological way, ethnographic studies, so it's quite a different. I've been interested in this practice and how they meet the people out there. So it's quite a different way. So in that sense, you could say that I approach how life is in the buildings, where design often go into how it's designed. And the home visit includes a narrative interview where the participants identify and describe the challenges, but also the hopes and desire for their everyday. What issues are there? And then they identify up to three activities where the lights are measured, but also where their visual function are measured in different performance tests. And they also do a Canadian occupational performance measure, which is how they rate themselves, how they think these are performed. And together with a visual functions survey, that's the baseline of the assessment. And they measure lights, and they also talk to the participant about lights, and they do different measures of the lighting at home. And then next they are invited to the lighting lab, and the lighting intervention starts out by setting the scene. They kind of recreate the condition at home in this specific activity, and from there they start out testing different light, different bulbs, different arrangements. And it's in the activity, so it could be in the armchair or on the kitchen top preparing food, for example. Or at the dining table. And as this picture shows that the consultants demonstrating different kinds of light, so the participants can actually experience one-on-one what works better and what works better. And in the end of this lighting intervention, they sum up the intervention by specifying the lamps and the recommendation they have found, and then they also draw the different lamps and their directions, position and direction on this printed photography. So they kind of translate it for the participants again to bring home, and then the participants return to home and are themselves to buy and install this new lighting. And the follow-up visit is to measure the effect of this intervention. And then they repeat both the visual and occupational performance measure, and they conduct an end-line survey. And if you remember Roberta's diagram from before, this is a diagram from occupational therapists, which have a slightly different setup, but I think it's very similar. You could say that occupation is the activity that they base this whole thing on. And the environment, in this case, it both holds the social and the physical environment. And they see these different stages as parts of a process. This is something they have to go through to find these things. And you could use them to see the development in this process. And I'm sorry for the slide have done something funny, but and I won't go into detail with my theory in this, but I analyzed this empirical material using science and technology studies to kind of get a hold of what do they actually do in this. So first of all, they identify with the participants these different issues at stake, but they also help them translate them both from the home to the lab and back again. And in that sense, they coordinate between different types of knowledge at stakes, both the embodied knowledge of the participant, the embedded knowledge of the home environment, and new knowledge about lighting and the vision as they go about. And all this they do in a manner of adjusting it to the level of resources, existing knowledge, and motivation of each of these participants. So in some way you could say it sounds quite simple, but the act of actually front-loading the knowledge of the user, you could say, and inviting their relative in, and trying to find this everyday and embodied knowledge, it also means that they need to hold back their expert knowledge. And in that sense, I think this resembles something, maybe we can go in there into the discussion, but also the architects, are you the expert or are you helping people to find these solutions? So there is some interesting things there, I think, as well. And where they earlier made this expert recommendation based on the diagnosis and visual acuity and not relating it to the specific or the situated setting at stake. You could say that in this intervention they bring on all these qualitative aspects of lighting and how it's perceived, understood, and situated. Before they usually brought in assistive aids or special lighting, so it didn't actually concern the environment. And this is one of the things I can see, like a familiarity to universal design, that lighting is a single parameter, but actually what they do is that they approach it holistically. They approach it both as the technical but also the social. And another important aspect that also could link this to universal design is that they don't focus on the disability, but they actually take departure in lighting to support the abilities. So that turning around is not disability and diagnostic we're after. And back in the diagram before, you could say that both disability and ability is in this interaction between the individual, the activities, and the social and physical environment. And relating this, the process here to that have been important, because by both relating it to what's important for the individual, what's important for me physically, cognitively, psychologically, and social, means that the participants are motivated in a totally different way and empowered, you could say, than these general recommendations. And also they get it under their skin, and they actually bring this with them next time they enter an environment where they might have problems. So the solution is found both in the technical and the social. And this is the last. I have brought this quote from Inger Marie Lid, which is a Norwegian researcher within the universal design field. And she points at the need for interdisciplinary collaboration in this field, because as rehabilitation professionals often approach the social from the individual and therapeutic perspective, and the planning professionals approach the social at the spatial and structural level. And you could say that my research and my approach and my collaboration is at another level than Erika and Roberta's work. But then again, you will need to approach this from all these several levels. So I guess the interdisciplinary collaboration would be something we will discuss.
Yes, and thank you very, very much. And it's something that we would like to discuss. I think you touched on these really important themes that we'll tap into. I think the role of experts, and I'm sure that you would also like to just give a quick comment before we welcome Erika, because I think it is very interesting in terms of the previous way in which we have perceived architects as one might say, the divine intervention with a focus on aesthetics and function, and what you're exactly what you're saying to it is, okay, is there a new role? Is that an existential crisis? What does that require of the architect?
That of course architects are the professionals that are able to design spaces that then now we can experience. And of course, it's the ability of the architects to design better environments. But the way, the tricky part that he could, that the architects can gain is just to get knowledge from others, professionals, from the users, from other experts, so to have more information, so to make their work better. And also sometimes it's not, for example, possible to involve some kind of users because they are weak or fragile, so that it's difficult to involve, and then maybe we need to involve some other practitioners like occupational therapists, and that's the challenging part, but also the interesting one, when like practitioners can talk together and make something better.
I completely agree, and as you also pointed out to it, the translation, also holding back, knowing you are the expert and you actually do have insights and you kind of have an idea of what would be the right solution, and holding back in order to let others express themselves and identify and explicate their needs.
I just also think that there is also a translation in the case of the building process, that getting this knowledge from how our building works out there and back to the very design phases is a huge thing, but I think that is one of the things we should be working on as well.
I agree. And Erika, it's a pleasure to welcome you, and you deserve a medal for tenacity, because you have really worked with technology in the last hour to make this happen. And thank you for that endurance test that you have passed with kudos and applause. It is so nice to meet you and welcome you, and we're eager to hear your presentation so we can have a conversation afterwards. So just a huge welcome, and I'll let you speak.
Thank you so much, Pernille. And actually, I would love to be there also to solve this technical issue, but fortunately, here we are. So thank you again. And so Thank you to give the possibility to speak at this talk about universal design in relation actually to the topic of health in the presentation I'm going to make, because health is also the main field of my research group, Design and Health Lab at Politecnico di Milano, where I work as architect and postdoctoral researcher at ABC department. I will explore the outcome of my PhD research. That is an evaluation tool to define how much building can be universally designed to promote more well-being for different users. Talking about design for all in architecture, is extremely important how we define the concept of disability, because actually every one of us in our life can be disabled, because there are permanent impairments, but also temporary as aging, pregnancy, and situational impairments, which are generated by the impact of the environment of the people experience. As you can see, so disability concept depend on health condition, but also on personal factors and environmental factors. So actually more than a quarter of the European population face accessibility problem every day. For this reason, Design for All has been defined as the design for human diversity, social inclusion, and equality. And the strategy that is the focus of the research share the same objective with the universal design. They just come from different contexts, Europe and US, and they share the aim to provide more usable and inclusive environments regardless different user needs as age, gender, disabilities, and abilities, as you can see from these different pictures. The research focused on the relation between Design for All and healthcare environments, because the environment influence people behavior and health, and this is even more true in the healthcare environment that is used by different users that have different needs. So just think about the COVID emergency, where actually the level of stress condition, anxiety, and disease are very deep than other situations. So don't you think that safer, more usable, and inclusive environments can actually benefit to all the different users, from patients to the workers and visitors? However, still, social and usability aspects are only included at the end of the design process nowadays. Therefore, in hospital setting, there are still problems of accessibility, wayfinding that can generate extra cost and time for adjustment. And this impact on user health and in the overall service quality. So, the research focus on how can be possible actually to evaluate the quality of buildings in terms of design for all in order to improve well-being of different kind of users in designing. And the research objective was to develop a performance-based assessment tool that is able to provide a reliable assessment based on design for all quality in order to support also the design process. So the tool has been elaborated is named Design for All Audit, and it can be applied as a decision support system for designer and healthcare manager. As you can see from this scheme, this process is try to involve different kind of stakeholders, which is also an important issue that is tried by Design for All strategy. The tool can be used both in the project and for evaluating the quality of existing buildings in order to analyze and take decision on priority intervention in relation to the user's well-being. So here you can see the different methods that have been used in order to develop a design for all evaluation framework, because this tool is based on different kind of indicators. So at first, a systematic literature review has been addressed in order to collect different scientific articles, so the existing knowledge on the topic of design for all in relation to building performance assessment. And you can see the process of selection of these articles. Through this analysis, result that physical, sensory, cognitive, and social factors are at the basis on the design for all evaluation. The evaluation doesn't focus on specific categories of users. It doesn't focus, for example, on the way a person with specific needs use an environment, but the evaluation look at the performance, as you can see here in the scheme, that are all valid for all different kinds of users in different situations. But in addition to the analysis of articles, we made also empirical studies with stakeholders. We use this data as a basis to make some different workshops, 6 different workshops with users with impairments and experts, in order to go more in depth on which are actually the criteria that we have to consider to evaluate a space in terms of design for all. And then the research also analyzed for different hospitals, also looking at this quality. And all these different phases actually are guided by multi-criteria analysis that has been used as main methodology to define the evaluation framework. Finally, through expert interview, the framework has been validated. As you can see here, this is the result. So this is the evaluation framework of the tool that can assess design for all in buildings, considering 3 main qualities of design for all. So the physical and spatial quality, sensory and cognitive quality, and social quality, with the related criteria, indicators, and different kind of requirements, which are statements, that actually gives objective in order to evaluate true performance in the environment. And this is extremely important to understand the impact on design for all on hospital areas through a rating system based on performance. So to go more in depth, I show briefly the different qualities. So we have a physical and spatial quality that include usability criteria that refer to the possibility to use the environment in an equal and comfortable way, both spaces and objects. So for example, here you can see that resting areas are inserted in order to overcome long distances. But these are only some examples of design strategy related to each different criteria. Then we have functionality criteria as the flexibility of furniture, and finally safety and security criteria, which is related to risk management and perception. Then we have sensorial and cognitive quality that include wayfinding criteria. So wayfinding, as you can see here, can be associated, of course, to visual features that can help users orientate. So the use of language, the use of symbols, but also it can be also represented by perceptible information. So from this image, you can see that different kind of texture are used in the floor in order to orientate people also through the sense of touch. So not only through sight. Also, signboards can be used, and another important criteria is understanding, so the way we communicate information, not only, for example, about language, but also about the communication with ICT, the auditory communication, and so on. So just think about the check-in process in hospital, and all the way information about the visit also should be presented to the users. Then we have environmental quality related to light, acoustic, air quality, and thermal comfort. Finally, social quality includes two main criteria, so well-being, about the healing environment, physical activity, and health promotion. For example, you see in this picture a stair, because, for example, our strategy to promote physical activity is to insert in a hall a stairs very visible in order that it can be seen and used by the users, in addition, of course, to other way, like elevators or ramps. Finally, we have the criteria of social inclusion that take into account the concept of cultural appropriateness, but also the relation between users. So, for example, creating gathering space or space for more privacy, for example, for workers, and so on. And then also the very important issue to consider also the design process in order to involve different actors in the design process itself, both experts but also final users. The design for all qualities that you see before are analyzed through the tool in relation to 6 different areas, from outdoor to indoor space, and they characterize the structure of the tool, from the approach to the building until a final destination inside. So the evaluation framework is related to each of these 6 areas. The tool has been applied in 2 different hospitals. The first one is the Øien Children's Hospital that you can see here in Buffalo, in the state of New York. And then the tool has been validated in the Humanitas Research Hospital in Italy, in Milan. And actually, the analysis of the hospital demonstrates that the tool can evaluate the design for all outcomes along the dimension of health and well-being in relation to the different hospital areas. So another topic is to consider how, after the evaluation process that is made by an evaluator, so how the information about the evaluation can be given to designer or healthcare manager. So how can we give them the feedback about the evaluation? The analysis actually can be done at different levels. So we can look at the entire building or at different criteria indicators of specific area. And as you can see here, the system can provide the analysis in plan and also through percentage, but is not shown here, but it has been also developed a report that is able to give qualitative information, underlining critical aspects and suggesting design strategy for priority intervention. And also a prototype of an online platform has been developed in order to show also online how this evaluation can be done, in order to make the users able to understand how this process can be done in advance. So finally, the tool has been applied in the research in healthcare facility, but further research would like also to apply in different kind of buildings and also in projects. Because to conclude, the aim is to of course, going on in this application process, and the most important goal of this research through the tool was to generate awareness in Design for All, on the fact that we can support designer and decision maker in order to design more inclusive and usable environments that can actually promote health and well-being of different users. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Erica. What a wonderful and very inspiring presentation. Tapping into some of the topics that Turid mentioned, I feel that it is really relevant to also ask you the questions in terms of the role of experts and the need for translation of these various very specialized fields of topics, whether be it the physical category, the social aspect, and the cognitive. You mentioned the three overall parameters for the framework audit. What is your reflection on that role of the expert and the need for translation?
Thank you so much for the question, because in this way I can also make more specific about the process, because also through the analysis of the case studies, I understand that was really important to act as an auditor together with the people that actually know about the project, so about the facility manager, designer manager, and so on. The role of the auditor is to provide a specific knowledge about this indicator and to translate this information also at the different scales. So it's important to understand if we want to concentrate, for example, in a specific area or in the overall building. And we notice that it's very important also to consider different aspects. For example, the wayfinding in the horizontal circulation of a hospital was very well designed. In fact, the project manager were very happy about the way it was designed. But through this specific analysis, we understood that there were some problems in the whole. So it can be very precise and it can actually support also to give priorities on the intervention without maybe doing all the wayfinding system again. So it's useful actually to support the process and to guide designers and decision makers where some intervention about different kind of topic, from physical to, as I said, more sensory or social aspect can be done in specific spaces.
Very, very interesting, because I also noted that you had the observation of the need for various types of spaces where you mentioned the workers. But Roberta, in your presentation, you actually addressed the various needs of privacy or different types of space from the users. And I'm pretty sure that you could also have mentioned examples, Erica, in terms of patients that would have different needs for space. But how to ascertain those needs in the design process, because I also noted, and you addressed that as well, Roberta, that these case studies explicate just how complex it is to have a design for all. I don't know if you want to comment.
No, so like the example I brought about the handrail, that's also a good way to communicate the information that you are at the third floor, but in a different way, so without braille that some blind people don't know, or without any other information that needs to be any other way of informing that maybe people are not aware. So it's also the design, the universal design, a way of communicating something to someone else in a good way, and that's the most difficult part, but that's also where you get the knowledge. And
yeah, because I was part of what really I thought was fascinating by the various presentations, is apart from different methods and also the scale, it's different. But it's also usually when we have discussions within the built environment and construction, we talk about standardization. And what struck me throughout your presentations is one size doesn't fit all. So the standardization, and yet in the framework of audit, what you're trying to encompass is the complexity of different needs. But it led me to you, Turid, in terms of the intervention, because you addressed one vital aspect that I think that we often omit in the discussion about our, is the motivation. That when we know that one size does not fit all, then how do we ensure also that the users, that we tap into their motivation to accept the new knowledge? So I'd just like you to comment on that, Turid, and then also ask you, Erica, how you address that in your frame, because I think that is quite interesting as well.
Yeah, and I think
Thank you. So
we'll let Turid go first, and then to you, Erica.
Yeah, and I think that is also touch upon that the things we discussed today, and in Erica's presentation as well, is that we talk both about product, the built environment, but also the process.
Yes.
And I think that finding the motivation is what, as an architect or as a low vision consultant, you have to like figure out. So that is our profession, to kind of find the level. And I also think that that brings us to, you need to know all these things, but you also need to know how to apply them.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
that was a short.
Very good. And that leads into to you, Erica.
thank you. So yeah, I think that actually the aim is try to gather all this complexity about universal design. So as you see, different kind of aspects are taken into account, not only physical accessibility, but many different issues. And the challenge is, of course, consider, as we said, disability, but then all the different needs of users. And I think that about the process, the better way to do it, also as we see through the tool, is the fact that we have to combine this different aspect of the environment, the physical aspect, the sensory and the social, through the different settings of the building. So try also to consider and to imagine how users actually can use the different spaces from the approach to the building, when they enter, when they use the rest area, when they use the corridors. So in all these different spaces, the users have different needs. And for example, the tool try to help understanding this kind of needs and evaluating them. So I think that the process is to combine spaces and needs of users.
Yeah, and I also one thing that I was thinking as you said that, it's also in terms of the process then to make sure that alterations can be made. So if you want to learn from the users, it has to be in such a way that the learnings can influence the building, the design process. So I mean, there's also a timing element in this. So I think that is very interesting. I'd like to just, because we talked about this before we went live, throughout the science talks, we have actually entered various fields of specialization in terms of indoor air quality, the light in terms of its impact to the neurological functions and our well-being, spatial impacts on learning, which is very, very interesting. And as you also touched upon, Roberta, we read the room within less than a second whether we feel comfortable or not comfortable, but it takes us time to realize whether the air quality is good or poor. So that kind of interdisciplinary collaboration from your research experience in terms of universal design, what is your advice in how to enhance interdisciplinary collaboration? Would you like to go first, Roberta?
I think like the first step someone is working on this field is about awareness itself. It's about being aware that lighting will change in a minute, so the physical settings of the lightings here in the building will be different depending on the environment outside, that people are all different, so what I experience is different from what you experience, but also what I experience one day in the same building, it's different from I experience the day after in the same building. So it's really complex. And I think it's just being aware that there are many professionals, many practitioners working on different fields and on these complex dynamics, and we just need to find like a way for collaborating or like getting the knowledge from the others and try to combine so to make something.
So you?
Yeah, from my field and my work, I could say that a thing about this with timing, for example, because you could say for a space to be universal designed, you could say everyone is turning older, everyone is losing sight in some way, so we get new demands for what the lights. So in one sense, from my work, I could see that actually the consumer also needs to be brought abroad, because not abroad, on board, because you usually consider your lighting when you're moving into a new place. If you are so lucky that you're designing your own home, you consider it. But after 30, 40 years, these lamps you bought, then maybe we also need to remember that, okay, you could actually interact with this after the building is built. So thinking this building process is a much longer scope, I think, would be my input to this.
It's a good input. And Erika, you get the final recommendation on interdisciplinary collaboration.
So I really suggest to look at different points of view of different users, but also, as also Roberta said, about different actors. For example, in healthcare facilities, we understood that in the design process, already from the first phases of the design process, it's extremely important to have in mind and to involve different figures, so the designer, but also doctors, final users, different workers, because it's really important to consider different points of view because they reflect the needs of different users.
I think that is a beautiful way to end today's science talk, an encouragement to not only develop a language between professions and disciplines, but also to develop a language where we can incorporate and include all the various users in the process before the building is set in stone, as it were. And also a reminder to every one of us that our own individual needs change over a lifetime for various reasons, and the brutal fact is by pure aging alone, our needs will change. Let that not in any way finish the note on a downside, because the thing is that we now have so much knowledge that we can actually design and build to encompass and address those various needs. And I think, Roberta, you said it, that we need to have universal design because, and you also mentioned, all of you have mentioned it, to ensure a social space, an equal space, where we all have the possibilities to interact, because that is the basic human needs. We need to interact. So I wish you all either good morning, good day, good evening, wherever we are. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you'll join us for our last event in this series, namely the debate on Wednesday next week. To Erica, to Roberta, a huge round of applause from me to you. This has been absolutely amazing and fascinating. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And goodbye.
Thank you.